welcome back to The Bright Side and Happy New Year's Eve. And today we're doing my 2018 reading review. I'm sitting at my desk today because I have a lot of questions and stats and surveys and things that I've compiled to kind of look back on 2018 as a reading year as a whole and kind of assess everything that happened from like longest books to best month to most read authors. So if you guys are not in the mood for a super long video, then go check out one of my other ones because I think we're going to be here for just a minute. So I have a reading survey and a bunch of stats and things that I've compiled. It might be like a little bit out of order because I wasn't super organized and I am filming this video on New Year's Eve today, so it's extra fresh for you. We're just going to be talking about different stats and things that happened throughout the year. Tomorrow I'm going to be posting a 2019 goals and a 2018 looking back video, so I'll be going over specific goals that I had and whether or not I hit them, and also my new ones for 2019. But this video is mostly going to be stats on like super nerdy reading year, so like the longest book I read, how many authors I read, things like that. So I'm sitting at my desk so I can kind of like check on the questions and the stats and the thing compiled up over here. So first up, we're just going to talk about how many books I read in 2018. Goodreads is being kind of a pain right now, so like my reading goal is accurate, but then if you go to like my stats, it's inaccurate, so just kind of keep that in mind. Overall, I read 166 books in 2018. Whoop, whoop. Before everybody freaks out, first of all, I had a huge audiobook year, so that was a lot of the chunk of my reading. And second of all, I also read a lot of like kids books, not like a ton, but I read several kids books, children's books, chapter books, middle grade books, so that's one reason why the number is so high. Last year in 2017, I read 108 books, but the majority of them were physical reads, and I also wasn't working from home at the time, so I'll go over like how I'm able to read so much and all of that stuff in 2019. I have a bunch of videos revolving around reading more and how I'm able to read so much and just realistic reading goals and all that stuff, but I was really proud of myself for that. So overall, I read 96 physical books and I listened to 72 audiobooks. Now before you say, wait a second, that math doesn't add up, the reason that the numbers are slightly off is because I counted Gemina and Obsidio as physically read and as audiobook because I listened to and read the entirety of both of those books. So I did read overall 166 books, but I added both those books to both lists. I hope that makes sense. Out of those books, I completed 13 series. So from front to back, whether I reread them or not, from the first book to the last book in a series, I read 13 series. Most of them were trilogies. I think I only read like maybe 2 that weren't trilogies, and no duologies from that. So that was really exciting. I didn't really think I would be able to read like that many, especially from like beginning to end. I obviously read more series enders and things this year as well, but I didn't count them in that number. I also DNF'd 7 books this year. I only counted the books that I mentally decided to DNF, and it just wasn't like, oh, I don't have time to finish this and I forgot about it. There was a couple of those books that I am going to finish, but these are the books that I was just like, you know what, I'm going to stop reading this. Whether it's permanently or not, I made the decision, and I had 7 this year. I think it wasn't until like August until I DNF'd any books, and so I'm kind of surprised this number is so high just because I tend to DNF most of my books in September and October because my like scary thriller type reads are not necessarily my favorite, and so if I'm not enjoying it or if it's creeping me out too much, then I'll DNF it. But I did DNF 7. I do have videos about DNFing and the books that I've DNF'd. I don't have any yet for this year, but those will also be coming out in 2019. According to Goodreads, the longest book I read this year was Winter by Marissa Meyer, coming in at 827 pages. That was my longest audiobook. It was like 23 hours or something like that. And then the book that I physically read that was the longest was War Storm, coming in at 666 pages by Victoria Aveyard. Physically reading War Storm is one of the longest books that I have ever read, period, other than maybe a Harry Potter book, I'm not sure. And it really wasn't that bad. It didn't really take me too terribly long, but it wasn't my favorite book either, so. My shortest audiobook, I believe, was The Little Mermaid, coming in at like 45 minutes or something like that by Hans Christian Andersen. It was an excellent audiobook, by the way. And I think my shortest physical book, I'm not entirely sure, but I read like The Lump of Coal by Lemony Snicket, which was like, I don't know, 20 pages or something like that. It's a kid's Christmas book, so that was the shortest book that I read this year. The oldest book I read was The Nutcracker by E.T.A. Hoffmann. It was written in 1816, I believe, and then translated from German to English. I'm pretty sure that's how it is. So that was the oldest book I read. I think I read 2 more books in the 1800s and then maybe 1 or 2 in the early 1900s. And then the rest were all pretty modern. I read 17 new release books. Now I didn't read them like as soon as they came out. Some of them I finished, a few months after they came out, but I thought that was excellent. My goal was to read at least 1 new release a month. I prefer to read backlist books because I'm getting caught up on so many popular series and so many things I've missed out on over the years. But I thought reading that many new releases was really awesome. Out of those 17 new releases, I physically read 11 and I listened to 6 audiobooks. So that was also exciting because I usually prefer to listen to my new releases just because I don't usually have the physical book. It's super quick for me to get them on audiobook, but I did really good. I think I can beat that this coming year because there are so many things I'm excited about that are like follow-up to series and things like that. My most read author of 2018 was Marissa Meyer. I read the entirety of her works minus Arch Enemies. I read, I think, 10 books by her. Most of them, all of them I did on audiobook except for the graphic novels that I read. And I loved it. She is my new favorite author at the moment as far as like me just reading anything she writes no matter what. That's kind of how I feel about like Marissa Meyer. I love her so much. And once I finish Arch Enemies, I'll be doing like a Marissa Meyer like reading review / recommendations video. The second one I listened to the most was Cassandra Clare. I completed 6 Cassandra Clare books this year, which is kind of a big deal for me just because they're such hefty books. I didn't enjoy them as much as I wanted to, but I did it. I completed them and I just have to carry on with like Lady Midnight and see how big of a Cassandra Clare fan I am. But those were the 2 authors that I did the most. Everybody else was 3 books or less, mostly 1. I didn't like overly read 1 author except for Marissa Meyer. For audiobook narrators, I listened to over a dozen Rebecca Soler audiobooks. I don't even know the total because I didn't go through and add it up, but she narrates all of Marissa Meyer's books, so that gives me like 8 right there. And then she also narrates Carval and Legendary and Undead Girl Gang, and she's one of my favorite audiobook narrators. I will listen to almost anything she narrates, and I really got a good chunk of her like narrations in this year, and it was so much fun. My best reading month was actually December, which is really surprising because I am super busy with Christmas time. I house sat for my parents. I felt like I wasn't reading very much. I also crammed things in at the end of the month. I got sick. It was just a chaotic month, and somehow that was the month that I read the most physical books and audiobooks like combined. I listened to and read 19 books. But it was not my biggest page count because I read a lot of children's Christmas books, so that was why that number was really high. May was my most read pages month, and in May I read 5,995 pages. That was technically my largest reading month because I didn't read like kids books and stuff in May. I read like real young adult books and regular books. So that was technically like my best month. I'm not really sure what the reason for that is. I would have thought it would have been like June when I was doing like Mermaid Marathon and stuff, but it was May. However, in June, I did listen to the most audiobooks. I listened to 13 audiobooks in June. Again, a few of them are really short, like kids mermaid books, like not super like picture book type things, but like hour to 4 hour audiobooks. But I listened to 13 that month. I really killed it. If you guys aren't familiar, I do a mermaid readathon every June and July for myself, where I just read as many mermaid books as I can. I will be doing an actual like structured readathon in June or July. I'm coming up with a title and everything now, so stay tuned if you're interested and let me know. My most read genre for 2018 was fantasy. I think I read over 60-70 fantasy books. I had a hard time like compiling the list up, and I was gonna have the exact numbers, but it's kind of hard because a lot of the books I read were like almost fantasy, but they were sci-fi, or they were almost fantasy, but they were kind of dystopian classified, or they were kind of a cross between one genre or the other, contemporary and fantasy. And so it was kind of hard for me to determine, but I did read the most fantasy out of everything else, which really surprised me. I think maybe because a lot of the fantasy books just didn't like stick with me or stick out of my mind, but when I really totaled everything up, mermaid books or fantasy books, a lot of like the spooky reads I read are fantasy books and things like that, so I think that was probably why. I did read pretty diverse as far as like reading sci-fi. I read like the least amount, obviously, of like adult books and kids books, but as far as like YA goes, I think I read the least contemporary books. I'm not entirely sure, but I didn't read a ton of contemporary this year, but the ones that I did read I really loved, and that's always my goal with contemporary. I'm not like a binge contemporary reader, but I do want to like truly love the contemporary I read, and that happened this year, so that was really exciting too. I read 9 adult books this year, which was really surprising, and I loved most of them, and then the rest of them were YA kids in middle grade. I didn't total up the number again for those, but I always like to kind of keep track of how many adult books I read. I read 3 graphic novels this year, 2 I loved, 1 I almost hated. A little bit out of my comfort zone. I have a couple in mind that I want to read for next year as well. And I read 1 nonfiction book this year. I used to read a lot more nonfiction, and that's something I want to do more for next year as well. Maybe not talk about it as much on my channel, but you know, have them in my wrap-ups and things like that, just for like personal growth and learning things and all that stuff. I really loved the book that I chose this year to read for nonfiction, so I definitely want to read some more as well. So that is all for the generic stats that I've kind of like compiled up, and now we're going to do this quick reading survey. Is by the Perpetual Page Turner. It's the one that a lot of big booktubers are doing right now, and I haven't ever done it before, so we're going to dive right in. I will link the blog for this down below, so if you guys want to do it as well. Kind of fun to like check on all these stats. Best book you read in 2018. If you have to cheat, you can break it down by genre. I have a whole video on my favorite books and my favorite audiobooks for this year that I will link down below in the description if you guys are interested, but if I had to choose, I think I'm gonna go with Gemina by Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. It is one of the more fresher books in my mind, so that's kind of why it's sticking out, but it's just one of the books that gave me the most feeling, like emotions up and down. It's such a roller coaster. I loved Obsidio as well and Illuminae, but Gemina just, for me, was just, oh my god, it was so good. The whole Illuminae Files is one of my favorite series, but I think Gemina might be my favorite book of the year. I don't know, don't hold me to that. A book you were excited about and thought you were going to love more but didn't. For me, there were quite a few that hit this list. One of them is The Wicked Deep. This was a story about like witches and kind of like siren-esque magic, and it just really fell flat for me. I found it kind of boring and predictable, and I liked like the atmosphere of the book, but I don't know, it just seemed really like basic to me, and I don't know, I didn't hate it or anything, it just didn't live up to like my expectations. The most surprising book in a good or bad way that you read. Gemina is definitely going to be one of those as far as just the amount of emotions that it drew from me and the amount that I loved it. I had a feeling I was gonna love it, but I didn't know I was gonna love it so much. That's book 2 in the Illuminae Files, just FYI. Read Illuminae first. The book you pushed the most people to read, and they did. Being a smaller YouTube channel, I don't think that I've really pushed anyone to read anything yet, but I know a lot of my newer subscribers have talked about books that they have put on their list or like in the back of their mind because of my videos and my rants and things like that. I know of at least one person that has read this Lost Voices, either the first book or the series, which is my favorite mermaid series. I've been pushing that for a long time, so I'll probably go with that for my answer. Favorite new author you discovered in 2018? For this one, I'm definitely going with Marissa Meyer, simply because I love her now, like, so much. And Cinder has been one of those books that I have seen in like bookstores, and I've wanted to read it for years just because the cover, and like I love fairy tale retellings, and I finally got to it, and I was just so excited that I loved it so much. And then Heartless was amazing, and Renegades was amazing, so I'm so excited that I love her so much, and I'm really sad I only have one book left to read of hers. Best book from a genre you don't typically read or was out of your comfort zone? For that one, I'm going with Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant, because holy cow, this is an adult sci-fi book about killer mermaids. I have a whole spookathon vlog of me reading this book. It's the scariest book I read this year. I loved it so much. It was so awesome. It's turning into a TV show. I can't wait to watch it. It's got a second book coming out at some point. I'm so excited. I am really glad I read this because it's a thick book. It's very like descriptive. It's definitely adult and I wasn't sure how I was going to feel and I loved it. Most action-packed and thrilling book that you couldn't put down. Again, all of the books from the Illuminae files. I just literally, like, I read Illuminae in one day on an airplane in an airport. I read Gemina in like 2 days, listening to it and reading it, and I read this one. It took me a little bit longer because of Christmas, but I never wanted to stop reading them ever. It was just so fun, so much of a roller coaster for my little heart, and I loved it. Book you read in 2018 you are most likely to reread next year. I have several of these, mainly because their series are coming out. So I plan on reading the entire Shatter Me series over again, including Restore Me that came out this year before the next book in the series come out. I think there's 2 coming out actually. And then I plan on rereading Caraval and Legendary before finale comes out in May. And I'm sure there's more as well, but I'm definitely getting like caught back up with my series. Favorite cover of a book you read in 2018? For this one, I really love the cover of The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert. I didn't love the book that much, so it was kind of a letdown, but it has one of the most beautiful like gold foily covers and it's so great. Most memorable character of 2018? I read so many amazing characters. I really love Loza from Daughter of the Pirate King by Tricia Levenseller. She's just one of my favorite female protagonists ever. I love all of the characters in here, specifically Nick Malkoff, because he's just my type of guy character that I like to read about. So fun. Yeah, just a lot. Beautifully written book in 2018. For this one, I'm gonna go hands down Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. This is one of the adult books that I read this year and it's like post-apocalyptic. There's a plague and there's a Shakespeare troupe and it sounds really action-packed. It's not at all. It's completely character-driven. She calls it her love letter to the world and it truly is. It's just so beautifully written and so heart-pulling and lovely and it stuck with me this entire year. Most thought-provoking, life-changing book of 2018. Definitely Station 11 is one of those, but I think I'm gonna go with Scythe by Neal Shusterman for this answer because I can't stop thinking about it and I'm like, what would we do in this situation? Like, what would we do in a world where we didn't die and you have to like kill people off to decrease the surplus population? I don't know. And Neal Shusterman's like breaking it all down for you and it's just so thought-provoking and wonderful and I love it so much. Book you can't believe you waited until 2018 to read. Honestly, for me, being like a newer booktuber and being so behind on all these amazing YA books that if you guys knew some of the books I hadn't read, you'd probably be like, why am I even watching her channel? But for me, I think the one that I like literally had on my shelf the longest that I knew I was gonna love and I just kept putting it off was Uprooted by Naomi Novak. I think because it was an adult book, it was a bigger book, and sometimes I just put off books that I know I'm gonna love and I don't know why. That was when I'm really upset that I kept putting it off for like the past 3 years because I loved it as one of my new favorite books of all time. Beauty and the Beast retelling, fantasy, and a magical woods. It's got everything. Favorite passage or quote from a book you read in 2018? Oh, sorry for the dramatic lighting change. It is cloudy outside, but pretty much anything from The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. I'm going to give you one example right here, but there are literally so many. Of course there must be lots of magic in the world, he said wisely one day, but people don't know what it's like or how to make it. Perhaps the beginning is just to say nice things are going to happen until you make them happen. I'm going to try and experiment. I love it so much. Book that shocked you the most. I don't want to keep saying the Illuminae files because it kind of did. Scythe, Illuminae files. Yeah, those are the books that I was just like all the time in the book. And Into the Drowning Deep. Oh my god. Yes. OTP or One True Pairing of the Year. You will go down with this ship. All of the characters from Illuminae, Gemina, and Obsidio, hands down. Also, Aloza and Raiden from Daughter of the Pirate King. That one was super sexy and really cute. Yeah, those are the ones that are like standing out in my mind the most. Favorite non-romantic relationship of the year? Ella and Nick Malikoff from Gemina Studio. They are cousins and I loved it so much. Oh my god, I loved it so much. Favorite book in 2018 from an author that you have read previously. I didn't read that many from authors that I have read before. I don't know why, but I'm gonna go with Two Dark Reigns from Kendare Blake. Also Restore Me from Tahereh Mafi, because I am full on board with these series worlds. I cannot wait for the next books in the series, and I just loved the new additions that we got this year. Newest fictional crush from a book you read in 2018. I don't know, it's kind of creepy if I have crushes on the characters because I'm an adult, like a full adult. Obviously we know our male leads in YA books are written like they're like 30 anyway, but probably, can't really say because it's a spoiler, so sorry. The best 2018 debut that you read. I didn't read a ton of debuts this year, but I think this hands down goes to Sea Witch by Sarah Henning. This is one of my favorite books of the year and I didn't mention it in my audiobook wrap up. I really should have, I regret it now, but I love this book and I just found out that there's going to be a sequel coming out and I am so beyond here for it. It was a Little Mermaid retelling, but like a backstory of Ursula, and it was absolutely amazing. The best world building and most vivid setting you read? Again, I'm sorry. I'm sorry you're gonna be like, I'm never reading that because she keeps mentioning it. That definitely has one of the like most vivid settings. Caraval and Legendary, because I read them both this year. Oh my gosh, you can just picture everything that goes on at that at Caraval, and all the mystery and all of the enchantment and the magic, and it was just, oh, it's amazing. Book that put a smile on your face that was the most fun to read. For this one, I don't know, because I usually have a contemporary book in mind for this type of a question, but my contemporaries I read this year were kind of sad, and they were like kind of fun, but kind of sad. I think I'm gonna go with Undertow. Michael Buckley. I haven't talked about this one much recently. This is just a really fun, weird mermaid series, and it was like reading an action movie. Like it was just like reading an Avengers book. I don't know. It was so fun, and like it definitely had dark stuff in it too, but it was just a blast. It was just like a fun, exciting like adventure. Book that made you cry or nearly cry. Obsidio is on there. I didn't sob, but I teared up. But the one that made me like physically sob was The Secret Garden, just because of things that I have in common with the book, and I love it so much. It's one of my favorite books of all time. I was in my office reading it, just like sobbing like a little girl. Best hidden gem of the year? For that one, I'm gonna go with In Other Lands by Sarah Rees Brennan. This book is such a hidden gem. I hear nobody talking about it. I originally read it because they have mermaids on the cover, and I thought it was gonna be like a mermaid book. There are mermaids in the book, but that's not really what it's about. It's basically a coming of age story about our lead character. I think his name is Elliot. It's been a minute since I've read it, and he winds up getting invited to go to a magical world and cross over the wall into a magical land, and there are mermaids and harpies and elves, and he gets to have all these adventures. But Elliot is just such a snarky character and nobody really likes him, and he winds up having a different experience in the magical world versus the real world, and it has so many elements in it that I just can't go into, but it's about him growing up, and it has like kind of Harry Potter vibes, even though Elliot is like really snarky and sarcastic and kind of an unlikable main character, but likable at the same time. I wish more people would read this book. The audiobook was amazing. I didn't mention in my favorite audiobooks of the year, but again, I should have, because it was so good. Name a book that crushed your soul. I didn't read very many like sad or sad books or like tragic ending books this year. There were definitely books that like really pulled at my heartstrings, like Why We Broke Up by Daniel Handler, or Tiger Lily by Jodi Lynn Anderson, but I don't think that anything like destroyed me in that kind of a sense, thankfully and not thankfully, because I kind of like having all the feels, but yeah, I think I don't really know. I don't really have a good answer for this one. Name the most unique book you read in 2018. Honestly, the Illuminae Files was the most unique as far as like the format and the way it was written, and Why We Broke Up is similar that way too, just because there's like illustrations and like documents and all that stuff, and there's like illustrations in both the books, and then the Illuminae Files has all the documents and things in it that I'm sure that you guys know. Those were probably, as far as like format and like reading style, those were the most unique books that I read. Those are really the only ones that are coming to mind, probably because I keep talking about them both. And name a book that made you the most mad is the last question. It could be mad as far as like in a good way or in a bad way. For this one, I'm gonna go with two books. Reindeer Boy, which was a graphic novel by Cassandra Jean, because it was just so weird, and if you really think about it, the lead character is a jerk. And then also Anna and the French Kiss by Stephanie Perkins. I love Stephanie Perkins' writing style, but this book made me so angry just because of the way the relationship played out. I was just like so irritated with it. But out of those two books, like, they really weren't that like anger causing. I had way more emotionally angry books in 2017. So overall this year, I did pretty good. So sorry for the bad lighting, you guys. Okay, looking ahead, a book you didn't get into in 2018 that will be my #1 priority in 2019. Again, I have tons of these because I'm just so behind in my YA reading, popular reading books. Just to name a few, I didn't get into the Grisha series like I wanted to. I didn't start my Percy Jackson, like Rick Riordan-a-thon like I wanted to. There's a lot of books that I really wanted to get into, but there's only so much reading time. But I'm starting off the year reading Cruel Prince by Holly Black, and that was one that I really wanted to read, and I didn't read it yet, so we're gonna do that. You're most anticipating for 2019 that is not a review? I don't know. This one's really hard because I'm super excited for Finale by Stephanie Garber. I am super excited for Shadow Me and whatever the new Restore Me, Define Me series. Shadow Me series book. Really excited because that cliffhanger from Restore Me was ridiculous. Name a debut that you're most anticipating. Honestly, there aren't really that many. I'm not really up and coming on the debuts. I kind of learned about them as like the year goes on. I kind of am like leery about debuts because a lot of YA authors try to kind of like cash in on the YA market, and so they don't always spend as much time on their books and their craft as much as they do just like trying to get something out there to be really popular. So I kind of wait for things to kind of come in before I jump into some debut authors. But for this one, I am gonna say Again But Better by Christine Riccio, who is one of my favorite booktubers. She might be the biggest booktuber, I'm not really sure, but she's got this contemporary novel coming out, and I don't even know what it's about, but I'm excited. Series ending or sequel that you're most looking forward to in 2019, that's gotta be Finale by Stephanie Garber, and also the last Three Dark Crowns book, which we are not sure. We don't have a title on yet because I love both of those series. Alright, and the rest of the questions are all about bookish blogging and that kind of stuff, and this video is already long enough, so we're gonna stop it here. I am sorry for the terrible lighting. I really needed to get this up quickly, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. It was really kind of more for my own benefit, so I can look back on it and compare 2019 to 2018 since I didn't do it in 2017. But let me know some of your guys' stats and goals and figures, and I love these kinds of like super nerdy delicious videos, so let me know down below any of these kinds of things that you find interesting, and I will link all of my like 2018 and 19 related videos down below if I can remember it. I have, like I said, I have my goals video, should be up tomorrow, and then I also have my end of the year favorite book videos, and I've got my like anticipated releases coming out, and there's like a bunch of like new exciting videos. So hope you guys are having a great day, and I will see you guys next time on The Bright Side. Bye!